Welcome back. Today we want to continue on with our discussion of what Congress can do. So Congress has the authority to dictate foreign policy and national defense, and they do that in a few different ways. First of all, if the president wants to enter into a treaty with a foreign country, that treaty has to be approved by the Senate. The Senate or Congress also has the authority to declare war. That's something that a lot of people get confused on because the president actually does not declare war. Congress does. And Congress has only declared war a handful of times throughout United States history. According to Clause 12 of Article 1, Section 8, Congress has the authority to raise and support an armed forces. So the Army, the Navy, anybody within the military, Congress can support financially. Congress also has some shared powers, powers that are shared between the president and Congress, namely. First of all, the declaration of war. Now, I just told you up here that Congress has the authority to declare war. But we do know that the president has the authority to command the armed forces. Okay, so the president can deploy the armed forces, but he can only, war is actually only declared if Congress approves it. So that begs the question, how many declared wars has America actually fought in? And we've actually only fought in 5 declared wars, okay? World War I, World War II, the War of 1812, the Spanish-American War, and the Mexican-American War. Those are the only 5 wars, declared wars, that America has fought in. The other conflicts that we would typically call wars, like the Vietnam War, the Korean War, the war in Iraq, those were not declared wars. Congress simply voted to fund, financially back those military efforts. Okay, so the War Powers Act, it goes along with this declaration of war concept. Basically, in the 1970s, like right around the Vietnam period, Congress kind of felt as though the president was stepping on their toes when it came to declaring war. They kind of thought the president was overstepping his power. So Congress passed this joint resolution called the War Powers Act. Sometimes it's called the War Powers Resolution in 1973. And this basically restricts the authority of the president when it comes to declaring war. So the president, as commander-in-chief under the War Powers Act, can deploy troops into a foreign country, and he has to tell Congress about it within 48 hours. And then within a 60-day period of that notification, Congress has to either vote to fund the effort or they have to declare war. And if they don't vote to fund the effort and they don't vote to declare war, then the president has to recall the troops. Okay. Now, there are a couple of sticky situations. If the United States has been attacked and Congress cannot physically meet within that 60-day period, then the president can kind of do what he wants. Okay. So the War Powers Act, the goal of that was to restrict the power of the president when it came to declaring war. Moving on then to powers concerning the growth of the nation. Congress has the authority to set procedures for naturalization. And naturalization, as we've talked about in class, is that process through which a person becomes a citizen. Congress also has the authority to dictate requirements that new states have to meet if they want to be admitted into the Union. So you have to have a constitution, first of all, and then there are some other requirements that individual potential states have to meet. They also have the authority to govern federal territories, and those territories we've talked about before. We're talking about the U.S. Virgin Islands and Guam and American Samoa and the Northern Mariana Islands and Puerto Rico. Congress also has the authority to govern federal property. So if you think of national parks like Yellowstone, or if you think of like the post offices or any other federal property, Congress is responsible for creating laws that dictate what you can and can't do there. So some other powers that Congress has, they have the authority to issue patents and copyrights, okay? And you're probably kind of familiar with copyright law from your English classes. Copyright law is what protects people from having their the content that they've written stolen from them. So if you go to someone's book and you copy and paste something and you don't give credit where credit is due, that's plagiarism. That's a violation of that person's copyright. Okay, so copyright is the exclusive right to publish a written work or a piece of music for a specified period of time. And then a patent is the exclusive right to create, to manufacture, and to sell a specific creation or an invention for a specified period of time. So if you can think about those infomercials that you see on TV where it might say patent pending, that's basically saying that that individual has applied for a patent, but they just haven't gotten one yet. Okay? So, moving on, perhaps. All right, some non-legislative powers, some powers that have absolutely nothing to do with making laws, but powers that Congress still has nonetheless. They have the power to choose a president. Now you say, wait a second, no, the Congress doesn't choose the president, we do, right? Well, according to the Constitution, if the Electoral College is not able to determine the presidency, then Congress, specifically the House of Representatives, is supposed to vote on whether or not, or on who the president is going to be. The Electoral College, we've talked about before, there are 538 electoral votes, and a person, in order to become president, has to reach 270, which is just over half of those votes. And if that person fails to reach 270, or if no one reaches a majority of votes, then that's when the House of Representatives would be forced to choose the president. Congress also has the power to remove a president, and they do that through that two-step process that we've talked about before. This first step is impeachment, okay, and the House of Representatives would vote to impeach a president, and they can do that if they believe the president has committed a high crime or a misdemeanor, which is written down in the Constitution, and if someone commits that, then they can be impeached from the presidency. If a president is impeached by the House of Representatives, then their trial goes to the U.S. Senate, and the Senate actually determines whether or not to remove a president from office, okay? We have never had a president be removed from office. We have, however, had two presidents that have been impeached, and those presidents were Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton, and we'll talk more about those in class. They also have the power to confirm. According to Article 2 of the Constitution, the president is responsible for making appointments, making nominations to positions within the federal bureaucracy, but also positions within the federal court. So if a president wants someone to be on the Supreme Court, the president can nominate them, but it's up to the Senate to confirm that nomination. So if the president nominates his best friend and the Senate doesn't really think they're qualified for the job, then they can refuse that nomination and the person wouldn't get the job. They also have the power to ratify, and I alluded to this before, the Senate has the authority and the responsibility to ratify treaties. So if the president ever wants to make a treaty with a foreign country, he first has to get the advice and consent of the Senate. And then they also have the power to amend the Constitution. Congress is the first step of the amendment process. Congress has to propose an amendment to the Constitution by a 2/3 vote in each house or through that convention method that we talked about before. All right, and I'll stop there with this video. If you guys have any questions, please ask me in class.